Welcome to the Hair for Kids. Join us as we explore the fascinating lives of our Rabbeim. In the previous episode, we discussed how the Baal Shem Tov lifted the spirits of simple Yidden and inspired them to serve Hashem. In this episode, we will begin to discuss another two great ideas that the Baal Shem Tov came up with to help the broken Yidden of Europe. Let me first explain to you how the Yidden lived in Europe before the Chmielnicki pogroms. Many Yidden lived in small towns, building very small communities. They had jobs and made enough money to live. Then the Cossacks came and destroyed many of these small communities. One day, two Yidden who had just succeeded in running away from the Cossacks were talking to each other in the great shul in Krakow. Bainish turned to his new friend.
Zisha, isn't it a miracle that we escaped those terrible Rishoyim?
Zisha replied,
Yes, but do you realize what happened to my entire town? Completely destroyed by the Cossacks.
I wanted to ask you, Zisha, if things ever settle down, would you move back to one of those small villages where we lived before the Cossacks came?
You've got to be kidding me, Bainish. Bli neder, I'm never ever going back there. I would do anything just to stay in the big cities.
Why wouldn't you want to go back to the villages?
Bainish, did you forget what happened when the Cossacks came to our villages? There were so few Yidden living around, and so many Goyim who hated Yidden. We were no match for them. If we stay in the big cities, we will be with many other Yidden, and it will be much harder for the Rishoyim to attack us.
But Zisha, in the villages, there are many more jobs that Yidden can do and make a living that way. If you live in a big city, what are you going to do to support yourself?
I'll be a shoemaker. That's what I did in the shtetl.
But in the city, there are already 2 or 3 shoemakers. How many shoemakers do you need in one city? There won't be enough people buying shoes for all the shoemakers to make a living.
Listen, Bainish, I'd rather go hungry in a big city with many Yidden than go back to a small town where there are barely any Yidden around.
I'm not so sure about that, Zisha. I would think again.
Bainish, with all due respect, I've already made up my mind.
Oi, Zisha, sollst du sein gesund. You should be well.
Many Yidden who ran away from the small villages like Zisha agreed with his idea and moved to the big cities. Because of this, there were not enough jobs for everyone to make a living. People were so poor, there were families who were literally starving in the streets. The Yiddishe communities could not figure out how to make the Parnasa situation better. Rabbi Yisrael once again came to the hidden tzaddikim with a plan.
Rabbi Isai, we need to help the Yidden make Parnasa.
Rabbi Yisrael, what could we possibly do? The Yidden are afraid to leave the big cities, and in the big cities, they don't stand a chance at making a living.
Rabbi Yisrael replied,
We need to convince those Yidden to move to the small villages. We have to find out which landowners are known to be nice to Yidden and help the Yidden settle and find jobs in their new places.
Rabbi Yisrael and the Tzaddikim Nistorim set out to work. Rabbi Yisrael went to a nearby town and stopped at an inn owned by a Yid.
Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Yid. Can I please stay here for the night?
Sicher, was ist die Scheile? Sure, what's the question? Was ist dein Nomen? What's your name?
Ich heiss Yisrael. My name's Yisrael. And you?
Ich heiss Beryl. My name is Beryl.
Sag mir, Beryl. Tell me, Beryl. What is it like to live here in this village?
Baruch Hashem, things are very good here,
Beryl replied.
Gutzkoff, the Poritz, the one who owns this town, is a very nice man and treats me very well.
If I may ask, Beryl, in what way does he treat you well?
Listen, Rabbi Israel, I need to pay rent to the Poritz every month, and for that he allows me to live and to do business in this inn. If business is tough, and I have a hard time paying that month's rent, I share with the Poritz what is going on. Baruch Hashem, he is very understanding, and he gives me extra time to come up with the money. He's a very nice person.
That was exactly the information Rabbi Yisrael was looking for. Rabbi Yisrael thought to himself,
This is amazing. I wonder how many Yidden I can convince to move here. They can start working the land, and they will be treated well. Tell me, Beryl,
Isn't there another town 20 miles away from here? Are there any Yidden living there?
Rabbi Israel, sollst du keinmal nicht wissen von solchen Paritzim? May you never know of such paritzes.
Why, Beryl? What is so terrible about the parts of that town? What is his name?
What can I tell you, Rabbi Israel? The paritz of that town, Weikopf, he is an evil man. He hates Yidden and does whatever he can to cause pain to Yidden living on his land. Just a few short weeks ago, he threw a Yid into the dungeon just because the Yid was a bit late with paying his rent.
Rabbi Israel thought, Beryl is right. I better tell the other hidden tzaddikim that Weikopf's town is no place for Yidden to settle. That is how Rabbi Israel went from place to place, finding out which landowners were welcoming to Yidden. Now that enough information was collected, it was time to begin with the second part of the plan. The tzaddikim nistorim, who were traveling from city to city and speaking to the Yidden, would ask whoever they met, "Was macht euch in Parnasse? How is your livelihood? Do you make enough money to feed your family?" Usually they got sad answers. Anshel, for one, replied,
Oi, I'm not making almost any money these days.
My family is starving. When I'm lucky, I can bring home a small loaf of bread, which gets split up among the members of my family. Other times, we go to sleep hungry. My children's clothes are torn and small. Life is really hard here.
The tzaddik told him, "Listen, Anshel, I have an idea for you. About 50 miles north of this city, there is a small town owned by a very nice poet named Gutzinski. He has a number of Yiddishe families living on his land, and they created a nice Yiddishe community together. Why don't you move there?" Anshel was surprised at the idea.
Leave the city? What would I even do in the village? How would life there be any better than life here in the city?
The tzaddik replied, "Because over there you'll be able to work on the land. You'll plant wheat, fruit trees, and other such things. Your wife will be able to grow vegetables, weave sheets, clothing, and raise animals. If you stay here, you will have more of the same, going hungry. I think it's worth it. Wouldn't you agree?" Anshel was thoughtful.
Sagt gut, what you're saying makes sense. But moving is a lot of work and costs tons of money. I just don't know how I will be able to do it.
The tzaddik quickly calmed him down. "Don't worry, Anshel. I will do whatever I can to help you make the big move. By the way, very soon, I will also be moving to a nearby village with my family as well. I will be farming animals there." Anshel was overjoyed.
Wow, thank you so much, Reb Yid. You are like a messenger from Hashem sent from Shemayim to help me.
Anshel's happy face said more than words could ever say. The next day, the tzaddik brought Anshel a bag of coins. Here is some money to help you with your move. May you have lots of atzlacha in your new place of living."
Sollst du sein gebencht, Reb Yid. May you be blessed.
That's how the tzaddikim went from person to person, convincing people to move to small villages and helping them settle. As a result, hundreds of Yiddishe families were finally able to support themselves in a respectful way. This is just one more of Rabbi Yisrael's great ideas that he came up with. Next, Rabbi Yisrael told the hidden tzaddikim,
"The Yidden living in the villages are still poor, as they are starting out. They can't afford to hire teachers to teach Torah to their children. And if that weren't enough, the parents have such a long and tiring work day that by the time they get home, they have no strength left to teach their own children. As a result, many older children can't even read Aleph Beis. Rabbi Sai, we need to hire teachers for these children. If we can't find enough teachers, we can be the teachers."
One tzaddik spoke up.
But Rabbi Israel, hiring teachers is going to cost a lot of money. How are we going to raise the funds for this giant project?
For this, I would like to ask two members of our group, Reb Aaron David from Brody and Reb Sholem Chaim from Lvov, to be in charge of raising money for this important project.
The two tzaddikim were both happy to work on raising the money. They did a wonderful job and were very successful. When Rabbi Yisrael was about 18 years old, he took his role in educating Yiddishe kinder to a whole new level when he became a teacher's assistant, or behelfer. Every morning, Rabbi Yisrael would take the children from their homes to the cheder, and in the evening he would take them back home from cheder. Rabbi Yisrael protected them from wild dogs who tried to attack the children on their way.
Zisa Kinderlach, we will get to the Cheder soon. In the meantime, let's say Birches HaShachar together.
The children's sweet voices rang out in the forest. During recess, Rabbi Yisrael approached one of the students.
Zissel, would you like to hear a story?
Zissel's eyes were shining from excitement.
Friends, Rebbe's saying a story.
The children chimed in.
Yes, a story. We want a story, a story.
All the children gathered around their beloved teacher as he began his tale.
When Moshe Rabbeinu first left Paro's palace, he went to see how the Yidden were doing, and he saw.
Rabbi Yisrael would talk to the children personally.
Hello, Shmelke, how are you today? Baruch Hashem, I'm all right. Shmelke, did you tell your father what we learned yesterday?
Shmelke had a sad look on his face.
My father works so hard. He goes to work when it's still dark outside, and he comes back in the evening. He is so tired when he comes home. Many times I don't get a chance to even talk to him. That must be very hard for you, Shmelke. I'm sure your father wants to speak with you even more, just his work takes away all his energy. By the way, I was at your father's store last week. Your father seems to be a very special person.
Shmelke's eyes lit up.
Really? What do you mean?
Rabbi Yisrael said,
Your father always makes sure never to overcharge his customers. If there is a person who can't afford to pay the full price, your father helps him and gives him a large discount. Your father is a special Yid.
Rabbi Yisrael would talk to each child about the special qualities of each child's parents. This helped the children feel connected to their parents, even though they weren't able to spend much time together because of how hard and long their parents needed to work just to be able to support their families.
I love being a teacher's assistant. I can see, Beruach HaKodesh, how the Malachim are so jealous of how much happiness these children bring to Hashem, since they say words of Torah with such pure sincerity.
Rabbi Yisrael sent hidden tzaddikim to many towns in order to speak with the adults and explain to them that even though they've never learned Torah before, they can start now. These hidden tzaddikim started teaching the adults Aleph Beis just like children in Cheder. They created classes where fathers and even grandfathers, some with gray beards, made tremendous progress in Aleph Beis and soon learned more and more Torah. Rabbi Yisrael became more and more respected among the hidden tzaddikim, and they began to call him Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael, master of the good name. But who would Rabbi Yisrael marry? And who would Rabbi Yisrael meet that would change the future of Yidden all over the world? To find out, please stay tuned for the next episode of The Hair for Kids. Thank you for listening to The Hair for Kids, where we explore the fascinating lives of our Rabbi.